Okay, this part was left. We discussed about serializability, that was conflict serializability. Uh, why we are using serializability is because we actually need to use interleaved schedules, but interleaved schedules are sometimes creating inconsistent database state. So, in order to have a confirmation on which serializable schedules are or which interleaved schedules are good, you need to know that which are serializable. So, whichever is serializable, that is an acceptable schedule. For that, you are using two different types of serializability test. One is conflict, another one is view. In case of conflict, you are checking that which uh, operations can be rearranged in a transaction so that you can make them serializable. So that process we saw. Uh, one is by shifting one by one the operations, and another one is by the graph. So whichever graph is having a cycle among any two transactions, you say that that is non-serializable. If the graph is having no cycles, then that is serializable. Right. Now, one small part left was view serializable. That is another less constrained version of conflict serializability. Okay, which has three conditions. How you can check whether a schedule is view serializable or not, or view equivalent or not. It is called a less restrictive version of your conflict serializability. Okay, the first case is if you are having a interleaved schedule and you are comparing it with the corresponding serial schedule, then both of them should have the same number of transactions. That means in the previous way where you are comparing this thing. Wait. Yeah, this one. These two are serial and these two are interleaved. So this became conflict serializable. This did not become conflict serializable. So you are trying to convert this into serial schedule. So this ultimately got converted. That is, this is a serializable schedule which is acceptable. In the same way, two schedules are will be said to have view serializable if they follow certain conditions. The first condition is that the two schedules should have same number of transactions like this. Then next conditions are um, for any operation, for any read operation in a transaction, if the value of x is read by the operation that has been written by another operation wj of tj, or it has been originally read from the database, then the same condition must hold for that variable in s dash. That means suppose s is a serial schedule. Okay, in that there are two transactions, say t1 and t2. If in t1 the first operation is r1x, okay, that means t1 is reading the value of x from the database. So the in the interleaved schedule s dash, the same transaction t1 should read the value of x. Got? Let me uh, explain one example. Say I am having two columns, two rows. So this is a schedule. This is schedule S. Okay, serial schedule. This is T1. So the first operation is R1X. Next operation is One x. Okay. There is another operation. There is another transaction here where the first operation is say W2x. Okay. Next operation is suppose R1y. Likewise, it goes on. Okay. So in this serial schedule, first T1 is reading the value of x, then it is writing the value of x. Okay, so if you are having another interleaved schedule with which you are checking the serializability, view serializability, then in that schedule transaction T1 should read the value of x first. Okay, then other operations should follow. Here you may write something else or something, whatever transactions this was having, you can write it, but they should have the value of x being read by the same transaction as was done in serial schedule. So that is another case. The third case is if the operation this of last operation to write the item, then yeah, this says that the transaction which is writing x last, suppose this is writing x last, because after this write R1 T1 is not writing the value of x anymore. Okay, so in the interleaved schedule also this transaction should last write the value of x. Fine. T1x should first read the value of x as it was done in the serial schedule. Here T2x should last write the value of x as it was done in the serial schedule. Okay, if there would have been say another transaction, it will be more clear if we include another column. Okay, say here it is reading the value of x here. So in this schedule, who is reading the value of x first? T1. This is T1, this is T2 transaction, this is T3 transaction. Fine. So in the interleaved schedule also, whatever way you arrange the operations, first T1 transaction should read the value of x. And last, suppose this is writing the value of x last. Then in this schedule also, the value of x should be written by transaction P3. After that, no other transaction will write the value of x. Understood? That means why the name is view serializable, because whatever data item you are viewing from the database, it should be same. It should be from the the modification should be same as it was by the serial schedule. Here the modification of value of x is depending upon T3 of this schedule. Similarly, the modified value of x depends upon T3 transaction of this schedule, because this is like writing the value last. Afterwards, no one is writing. Fine. So that is the case of view serializable schedule. If this exists, then you can say that these two are view serializable. So take the example. Yeah, this. Can you tell that whether these two are view serializable or not? Can anyone tell?
Okay.
Tell? This is T1, T2. This is T1, T2. This is a interleaved schedule. This is a serial schedule. So in the previous class we checked that these two are conflict serializable because you can move this part upwards and these parts downwards because these are not, oh sorry, this one you can move downward and this one you can move upward so that it gets equivalent to this civil schedule. So this is a conflict serializable schedule. But now the case is whether these two are view serializable or not. Can you tell these two are view serializable or not? How to
No,
test?
sir.
No, sir. First test is to see that which data item is getting read. This X is getting read. Who is reading it first? In the serial schedule, T2 is reading it first. The P1 is reading it first. So the second condition is not matching. Second condition was that whoever was reading the value of X first in any transaction in the schedule, that transaction itself should read it in the interleaved schedule. But this is not happening. These two are not serializable, view serializable. Okay. Now check these two, whether these two are view serializable. I guess anyone saying any answer or my earphone is probably not working properly. I cannot hear. Any answer from anyone?
Sir,
You
I
can write.
guess
Sorry. Hello. What is the answer? These two are view serializable or not? These two will be view serializable because T1 is reading the data item X first. Here also T1 is reading the data item X first. Here T2 is writing the data item X at the last. No one else is writing afterwards. Here also T2 is writing the data item X last. No one afterwards is writing the data item. Fine. These two are view serializable. Fine. So this part was there for left for view serializability. Next thing we will go to the concurrency control techniques. Yeah. Concurrency control techniques. What are the different concurrency control techniques? Any doubt? Any doubt? Anyone? Okay. So the topic is concurrency control technique. So what is this concurrency control technique? You saw that uh, when you are using interleaved schedule, there are multiple operations in a transaction. Uh, in the transactions, whenever there are these kind of operations, multiple operations, one data item is getting accessed by multiple transaction at a time. Okay, so how you handle those things? Suppose T1 is trying to write data item X, at the same time T2 is trying to write on data item X. So because of that, you may have lost update problem, incorrect summary problem that you have already seen, that whenever there is concurrent access on data by 2 or 3 or more transactions, then invalid data may enter into the database. Fine. So how do you avoid those things? One, the methods described under concurrency control techniques can be used in order to handle those situations. So under this chapter, we'll see what are the different concurrency control techniques. The major one is two-phase locking protocol. Then what are the limitations of those concurrency control mechanisms? Okay, so going into the details, what is the main purpose of concurrency control? Now, to ensure that the database property of isolation is kept intact, because you know database is having four properties: acid property, atomicity, concurrency, isolation, and durability. So when we discuss about isolation, you might have remember I said that the data, any database should have the transactions operated in an isolated manner. That means no transaction should be affecting how another transaction is operating. Okay, or it should not depend upon the uh, execution of another transaction. Okay, it should be operated in such a way that it is operating alone, so that the database will always be in consistent state. If the 2 or 3 or more transactions are operated in such a way that they are mixed, that means they are dependent upon each other, then it will be a troublesome situation for the database. There may be wrong entry or wrong modification to the variable that are getting used in the transactions. So that's the main purpose, in order to ensure isolation of the transaction. Then preserve the consistency. Consistency means the the way the database should have been modified or data item should have been entered. It should be done in that way only. So that is consistency. Then to reserve read write conflicts. Yeah, read write conflict. Suppose a transaction is reading a data item, suppose X, and the transaction is writing that data item at the same time. So what will happen is that whatever value it is reading, it will get changed or it will get modified. So it is supposed to read a value, but it is reading another value which has already been written by a transaction. So that becomes a problematic situation. Whenever two or more transactions are reading a data item, at that point of time you should not allow other transactions to write onto it. Okay, suppose X is being read by two transactions and the transaction is trying to write it, so it should not be allowed. Let them read first, let them complete the read, then you allow the write. Or suppose one transaction is writing the data item and the transaction also tries to write onto the data item, it should not be allowed. Okay, let one transaction complete, then another transaction will be allowed. Similarly, if one transaction is writing a data item, another two or more or one or more or transactions are attempting to read it, that should not be allowed. Whenever write is going on, let the write complete, afterwards reading will be done. When a read is going on, let the read complete, afterwards write will be performed. In the same way, so these conflicting instructions or this place can be managed by the concurrency control technique. If it is read write or write read, in all the cases you should make sure that one process is going on, not two. Okay, so those things can be controlled by concurrency control techniques, which has uh, the mechanism is called locking protocol or locking techniques. There are different types of locking. We'll see. What do you mean by locking is that you have to ensure that the transaction which needs to write the data item is locked by the transaction. That means it will be assumed that the data item solely belongs to the transaction. Fine. That means after it writes or modifies that item and it releases the lock, then any other can access. You might have remember from the operating system concept, or operating system is in this semester. Yeah, this semester, no? You might have read about semaphores. Semaphores. Okay. The semaphore is the same technique. That means a process which wants to modify that item is specifically logged by the process. So here also the transaction locks the data item and it modifies. After it modifies, it unlocks. So when it locks, what will happen is that no one else will be able to access. So if no one else is able to access, so whatever modification is getting done will be not affecting any other transaction. After it modifies, it releases the lock so that any other transaction can access. Whoever accesses afterwards, it has to again lock it. So once it locks, then it will be accessed by the transaction or modified or whatever things can be done. Fine. So in the first case, the first type of locking protocol is two-phase locking protocol. Two-phase locking means there are two phases in which this mechanism works. First is locking phase, another one is um, unlock phase. Okay. In the lock phase, it will acquire the lock for a data item, modify whatever things it has to modify, then it will unlock the data item. Fine. So uh, by means of locking, what you do is that you give the permission to read or write. Okay. When you write, the syntax is lock bracket X. So you are locking a data item X. It in some books it or they also write it as lock underscore X. So they are locking the data item X for their use. Then they can whenever the writing is finished, they will write unlock X so that the data item will be unlocked for other transaction to use. Okay, in the two-phase locking protocol, there are two different uh, phases given here. Yeah. In the binary lock, before actually we go to two-phase locking. Yeah, in this also. In case of binary lock, a binary lock is nothing but 0 or 1. If you are having lock x as 0, that means there is no lock on the data item x. You can acquire the lock. So you will write lock x equals to 1. That means you are symbolizing that the x data item is locked by me to write into it. So lock underscore item x is symbolizing that lock the item x. Whenever it is 1, then that means there is a lock on x. Whenever it is 0, there is no lock on x. Anyone can access it. Whenever it is 1, no one can access it other than the transaction which has logged it. Okay. So that is the use of binary lock. Either it is off or on. If it is on, that means the data item is logged by some transaction which is modifying it. After it releases the lock or unlocks it, then anyone else can access, any other transaction can access. These algorithms are there. These algorithms are not required generally if you know the concept verbally or as an overview, then no need to remember this algorithms. Okay. So, transaction P must issue the, yeah. In case of your normal binary locking, this these things are ensured. The transaction P must issue the operation lock item X before it does any of read X or write X. Fine. That means it has to acquire the lock for the data item before it tries to read or write into it. Fine. Then the transaction P must issue the operation unlock X after it reads or writes into X. Fine. So in order to read or write, first thing is it has to acquire the lock by means of this statement lock item X. so that it gets reserved for transaction T. After it completes the modification, read or write, then it issues unlock X, so that the data item is unlocked for other transactions to use. Then the transaction T will not issue a lock item X operation if it is already holding a lock on X. Okay, that means a transaction will not try to acquire another lock on X itself when it is already holding a lock on X. Then the transaction will not issue an unlock item X operation unless it already holds the lock on item X. That means it will not issue an unlock statement unlock item X if it is not holding a lock on X. Fine. Okay. Uh, so that was binary lock. That means either it is there or it is not there. Okay. Either if you are having a lock, you can do both the things, read and write. If you are not having the lock, you have to request for the lock. That means lock item X is a request that you have to make. Okay. Another type of lock is shared or exclusive lock. Here it is a little bit different from the binary lock. Shared lock means that is normally a read lock. So what happens is that whenever you are having a shared lock on any data item, any other transaction can also acquire a shared lock. That means normally this is a read lock. So if transaction T has acquired a shared lock on data item X, transaction T1 is also acquiring a shared lock on data item X. Both of them can read the data item. They cannot write it. They cannot write onto the data item or the variable. They can only read it. So share means they can share and read. They cannot share and write. Okay, write lock is not shared. Read lock is shared because the data item is getting read from the database by multiple transactions. That is allowed. But multiple transactions cannot at a time write into the data item. Right? Okay, so that is the use of shared lock. If you are acquiring a shared lock, you need to write it like read lock. In the previous case, you are writing lock item X. That means you are acquiring a lock. Whatever you do after that, you may read it or modify it. It is up to the transaction. It can do whatever it wants when it locks the data item. But in case of shared lock, if it issues read lock, then it can only read. If it issues write lock, it can only write into the data item. Okay. When it issues a read lock, it cannot write. When it issues write lock, it can read because after reading only it will write. Fine. Then at the end it unlocks so that other can use. Fine. This was your shared lock. Any issue up to now?
Any doubts up to now? No doubts?
No, sir.
Anyone? Anyone from 20 people? Any doubt anywhere? What is shared lock? What is binary lock? Why locking is required? What is done in case of shared lock when you acquire a read lock, write lock, and unlock? There are three things in shared lock. Fine. Read lock, write lock, and unlock. In case of binary, there are only two things: lock and unlock. Okay. Either you unlock or you lock. Fine. There is read and write only. Okay. Uh, Now the problem in this case of this part of shared lock is that uh, the indicator is called shared lock because these are the sequence of shared lock. A transaction T should have or must issue the operation read lock or write lock before any read operation is performed. Okay, if it wants to perform a read operation, it has to first request for a read lock or write lock. If it acquires a read lock, it can read. If it acquires a write lock, it can also read, and it can also modify. Okay, the transaction T must issue the operation write lock before it can issue write item X. Suppose it wants to modify, it has to acquire a write lock. Similarly, a transaction T must issue the unlock operation, unlock X statement after all the reading and writing are completed. Getting that means whatever lock it has acquired, it is for either reading or writing. Whenever it is reading or writing, the process is complete, then it can unlock the data items by unlock X statement. A transaction T will not issue a read lock if it already has a read lock or write lock. Okay, if it is having a read lock, then it will not be allowed to issue another read lock or write lock on that data item X. Similarly, if it is already having a write lock, it will not be allowed to have it will not be allowed to have a read lock or write lock again. Fine. So finally, a transaction T will not issue an unlock operation unless it already holds a read or write lock. Fine. Yeah, conversion of blocks. Sometimes you require to convert the type of lock that you are having. Suppose you are having a read lock. Initially, you acquired a read lock for a data item X, but later you thought that no, I need to write on the data item X. So you have to further request for writing onto the data item X. Fine. Unless you acquire the right lock, you cannot write onto it. Even if you have a read lock, you can only read. You cannot write. Similarly, if you are having a write lock, the writing process is complete. You no longer need to write it. So you can issue a read lock so that the writing permission is taken back and you can only read. So you can downgrade the lock. Either you can upgrade or downgrade. Downgrading is easy because you had a write lock which is a superior lock. When you downgrade, the writing facility will be taken back, but you can still read it. But if you are having a read lock and you are requesting for a write, then it will be seen that whether any other transaction is writing it or not, because you are having read lock only. So another other transaction may also be writing or reading. If no one is having any other lock on that, then you will be allowed to have the write lock. Fine. Okay. Fine. So the main aim is that you have to make it serializable. We'll see that when you apply this locking technique, still there are some lacunas or there are some problems because of which even if after you apply locking technique, the serializability will not be ensured or the consistency will not be ensured. You see the case of 22.3a. 22.3a is probably down. Yeah, there are two transactions like this. T1, T2. T1 is reading. T1 is first applying a read lock on Y. Then it is reading the data item Y. Then it is unlocking. Then again applying for a write lock on X. Then it is reading the data item X, modifying it, then writing the data item X, then unlocking it. You remember the previous time how the schedules were looking? Not there. This line was not there. This line was also not there. This line was also not there. This line was also not there. Only thing is that you are reading the data item X, the data item Y, reading the data item X, then adding them, storing onto X, then writing the data item X onto the database. Yes or no? There are no unlock and lock statements. But when you apply concurrency control, these statements are required, because what you are doing here is that first you know that you have to read the data item Y. So you are first acquiring a read lock. After you read it, you unlock it so that others can read or write. Okay, other can write. Then you need to modify value of X. So you apply for a write lock. When the write lock is granted, you read it, then modify it. Fine. Then you are writing into the X, writing into the database, then you are unlocking X. So this is the flow when you are using concurrency control. Okay. Now say the initial value of X is 20, Y is 30. The result of serial schedule T1 will be 50-80. Result of serial schedule T2 T1 will be 70-50. So if is there any interleave schedule, the result that this interleave schedule delivers should be equals to any of the serial schedule result. It should be either 50-80 or 70-50. But if you see, you have applied the unlock locking mechanism. That means you have proper concurrency control technique in place. But still the results are 50 and 50. That means which is not equivalent to any of the serial schedule. So this is non-serializable. The main aim was that you are applying read log, unlock, write log, etc., all those things for making the interleave schedule concurrent to a serial schedule. But this schedule is, even if after so many unlock locking, it is not producing serialized result, okay, or serializable result. So where is the fault? The fault is with this statement unlock Y. You are unlocking it. That means you should not have unlocked it here, because the problem occurred where? Can you mark the problem in this case? See, it is reading the data item Y, that's fine. Reading the data item X, that's fine. Then it is adding X plus Y equals to X. But what is the value of Y here? It is not the value that here T1 read. It is the value which T2 is modifying. So you allowed T2 to modify the value of Y before it could have added on to X. Here it is read. The value that is T1 is reading is from the database. It should have been added with X and the result would have been stored in X. But here the Y value is that value which T2 is modifying. So even if you have concurrency control technique, this happened because you unlock the value of Y much earlier. Whatever you have read, if it should have been unlock Y should have been somewhere here, then this should have this transaction T2 would not have been allowed to have a right lock on y, because since right lock was there, it could modify. If this would have not have been released here, the read lock would not have been released here, then T2 will not be able to write into y at this point of time. It should have shifted it to somewhat afterwards, so that this would be proper. So in order to ensure this type of things, you need to have more stricter version of two-phase locking protocol. Okay, so there are four variety of two-phase locking. The one which you saw, the lock, unlock, shared lock, etc., that is basic two-phase locking, where there are two phase. Two phase means one phase is of granting of locks, another phase is of revoking the locks. Granting means what do you mean by granting of lock? Anyone?
allowing it to lock on any data item,
Huh?
allowing a transaction to lock on any data item.
Yeah, allowing the lock on any data item so that the transaction can either read it or unlock, or sorry, write it. So in the two phase, in the normal two phase locking, there are two phases. One is uh, expanding phase, another one is shrinking phase. Okay, expanding phase means gathering the locks on data items. Okay, you go on acquiring the locks. Here you see the two phase locking protocol is mainly having two phases. One is expanding or growing phase, another one is shrinking phase. Shrinking phase means here you release the locks that are on the data item. Fine. So in the expanding phase, you gather the locks, you go on acquiring locks on the data items. In the shrinking phase, you release the lock so that other transactions can access it. So in the two-phase locking, there are, this is the basic two-phase locking part. Then there are more stricter version of two-phase locking. Next one is conservative two-phase locking, conservative 2PL. Okay, it says that the the transactions should pre-declare the read and write set. That means they should declare previously that how, which are the data item they will be acquiring beforehand. Okay, so they have to pre-declare which data items they are going to use. So if any of the, suppose the a transaction says that I want to acquire lock on X, Y, and Z. So initially it should apply for lock item X, lock item Y, lock item Z. Whenever it got the access to all X, Y, and Z uh, access is given, then only it can perform the whatever operation you want to do. Unless and until it is having all the locks, it will not proceed. So it will wait for all the data items to be logged by it, then it will go on. Okay, so it waits until all the items are available for locking. Okay, so this is a deadlock free protocol. This thing we will discuss later, what is deadlock free and deadlock protocol, because there will be deadlock in some of the cases. When you apply some kind of locking, there will be deadlock, you have to avoid that also. So conservative 2PL is always a deadlock free protocol, because every transaction will be acquiring the lock initially. But this is not a realistic protocol. That means practically this is not in use. Why? Because a transaction is suppose the transaction contains hundreds of operations. So beforehand, at the starting time, it may not know that what are the items it will require. So locking all the items from the beginning is quite impractical. Okay, suppose some point of time it requires a data item which is not logged by it initially. So what will be done? That's why declaring all the data items from the starting is quite impractical. So this is hardly used practically. Okay, so this is conservative 2PL, where all the transactions should apply for the lock initially. Whenever they are granted, then only the operation can start. Okay, then there is another version mostly used is strict 2PL, strict two-phase locking, which guarantees strict schedule. That means here, if you are having a strict 2PL applied, your result will be perfect. Okay. Um, what happens in this case is that the transaction T will not release any of its exclusive locks. Okay, there are two different types of locks, as you know. One is read lock and is another one is write lock. Write lock is also called as exclusive lock. Read lock is also called as shared lock. So a transaction will not release any of its exclusive locks until it commits or aborts. That means it can release its read locks. Suppose a transaction have gathered locks on X and Y. X is read lock, Y is write lock. So read lock it can release at any point of time, but write lock it can release only during the end, only after it completes. Okay, that means only after it commits or aborts. So what will happen is that whatever modification, because write locks are always for modifications. If it wants to do any modification on any data item, it will acquire a write lock. So whatever modification it has done on the data item should be properly available to the other transactions. If suppose in the middle it aborts, then what will happen? The transaction would have to be uh, reversed, or the entire operation has to be cancelled out. So if it is having a lock and it is aborting, then no other transaction needs to be aborted, because no other transaction would have read it. Since it has acquired a lock, write lock, so it is obvious that the whatever modification it has done is only available to itself, not to others. So even if the transaction fails, other transactions will be safe. They will not be rolled back or cancelled out. Fine. Are you getting this point or any doubt? See the previous concept of serializability. Here you saw this particular part. Yeah, this one. This is modifying data item X, writing onto the database. Then this transaction is reading the data item, modifying it further, writing it into the database. Then this transaction was trying to read data item Y. After that, it failed. So when it failed, this has to be rolled back. This entire modification will be cancelled. So this modification which T1 did, subtracting n from x, that value was read by T2. So when it got cancelled, this also should be cancelled. This also should be aborted. This transaction should also be aborted. Any other transaction which might have read data item X afterwards should also be aborted. So that is a failure. That means that should not have happened. Because of this transaction failed, all the other transactions which have read the data item X should also fail. That was the case or not? So in order to avoid that, if you apply a lock on write item X and you unlock this X at the end of this transaction, so that whenever it fails, no other transaction would have read this data item X, because it had acquired a write lock. Yes or no? So that was the main aim of that locking. That if you are writing, if you are modifying it, better you lock, then modify, release the lock only after this completes, so that even if it fails, no other transaction will be rolled back. Fine. Okay. Uh, so strict 2PL is not deadlock free. Because of this, deadlock may occur. We'll see this in the next class, that how deadlock are occurring. Then apart from strict 2PL, there is another version of rigorous two-phase locking, okay, which is uh, more restrictive. It is more stricter than the two-phase locking. Two-phase locking says that you cannot release the right lock until the transaction completes. Rigorous two-phase locking says that you cannot release any of its lock. You cannot release any of the lock acquired by the transaction until they complete. Whether it is exclusive, write lock, or shared or read lock. Okay, so be it any type of lock acquired by the transaction, it cannot release any lock until it completes. Fine. Can you mark the difference now? What will happen by uh, rigorous two-phase locking and what will happen by strict two-phase locking? There is another difference. Difference in the sense that in case of strict two-phase locking, uh, it is always in yeah the between conservative and rigorous two-phase locking. The conservative two-phase locking was this one, no? Yeah. Conservative two-phase locking is always in uh, shrinking phase. Okay, once the transaction starts for a conservative two-phase locking, it is in shrinking phase. But in case of rigorous two-phase locking, it is always in expanding phase. Can you guess the difference? Suppose a conservative two-phase locking is there. Okay. It will acquire a read. It will request a read lock on suppose Y initially. Okay. Then it also requires read lock on suppose Z. It also requires write lock on P because it has to declare all the locks that it requires at the beginning. Okay, whatever locks it requires, it has to declare at the beginning. Fine. Then once the operation starts, every operation can start afterwards. It has gathered all the locks. Then at the end, it unlocks. Okay, unlocks Y, Z, P, T, all those things. So once the operation starts, it is in shrinking phase because it will not acquire any other lock. All the locking are done here. So this is the expanding phase where it is acquiring the lock. By that time, the transactions actually has not started. The operation inside the transaction are not yet started. Once they start, they go on unlocking all the locks that it has acquired. So that's why conservative two-phase locking is always in shrinking phase. But if it is a uh, rigorous two-phase locking, it is always in expanding phase, because it releases all the locks at the end. Okay, it it gathers one by one. Uh, yeah, does not unlock any of its item until after it terminates. So the transaction is in expanding phase until it ends. So it is in expanding phase until it ends. But the conservative two-phase locking is always in shrinking phase because it starts, then it unlocks one by one.
सर से बेडशीट नहीं उड़ा
हाँ, okay. This much for today. Any Any doubt in this two-phase locking concepts?
No, sir.
Okay, then just see one example if you can relate anything. There is no problems in this exercise. Okay. Just see randomly in internet if you get any, if you can solve it or not. If any doubt, because at least one if you do know, then you will get to know where the and what is the concept. These things are a little bit important. The locking concepts with respect to your competitive syllabus and also with respect to semester one, 10 marks or 5 marks, more than 5 marks question may come from locking. What are the different types of locking applied on schedules or transactions, how they behave, those things will be important. So see them if you find any doubt you can ask any point. Fine then. Let me take the attendance.